have a look at this clip from Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, speaking to Tucker
Oh
Carlson,
no,
that lovely individual.
do I have to?
Who doesn't want to have a world where Russia and the United States are doing collaboratively good things together?
Exactly.
Thinking about how to integrate their energy policies in the Arctic.
Exactly.
Share sea lanes. Maybe send LNG gas into Europe together. Maybe collaborate on AI together if we can get past, technology migration. Who doesn't want to see a world like that? What about the presidents being able to talk to one another about Iran, where Russia has some degree of influence? I mean, who doesn't want to see a world like that?
The executive summary out of this is Russia and America should collaborate to sell their oil to Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, this is happening in real time in front of our eyes. It is absolutely, and to have a creature like, sorry, help me out. Who was interviewing him?
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson, to have a creature like Tucker Carlson who can have absolutely no credibility whatsoever. He is a Russian shill.
Yeah.
And to have the two of them collaborating
it's Steve Witkoff, how naive can he be? Putin is sitting there, and I've used this description beforehand, but behind his great big oak desk in the Kremlin, with a very large glass of best Russian vodka on ice in the best Russian crystal tumblers he can get, with a big white cat in his knee, as he's stroking it, smiling away, because there's no way will Russia ever cooperate with the United States where it's not in Russia's interests. It'll not cooperate with anyone. The underlying thing that I'm picking up, though, from all of this and all of this gushing, if you put aside the emotion of and the naivety of the United States gushing over Russia, actually what it's saying to me is that the United States is much more worried about the Russian relationship with China and the Russian relationship with Iran. And that then puts into context the US's view on what's going on between Russia and Ukraine. That's why the US wants to pull away as quickly as possible, because they want to focus on Iran and they want to focus on China. And I can understand that, but oh my God, get away from this this mutual love in between the two and wake up to reality.
If we're just going to define dictator, the first feature of a dictator is he's not elected. So Zelensky's not elected. He's also, he's banned a religious denomination. He's murdered his political opponents. He has banned a language group. Those all seem like features of dictatorship to me. Now, he has the support of the British intelligence agencies. That doesn't mean he's not a dictator, though.
I would argue that if you look at the history of Ukraine since the 90s, since it became a, for want of a better phrase, democratic country, as they would say, well, I mean, by the same criteria you support Putin being popular in his country, I think just under 90% of Ukrainians voted for it. You wouldn't dispute that.
Well, first of all, the country had a coup sponsored by the United States government, the CIA, in 2014. So everything that happened subsequent to that, I don't think we could call part of the democratic process.
So come on, Cormac, what do you think of that?
Philip, I mean, where to start on this? If this wasn't so serious, it would be utterly laughable. I mean, Tucker Carlson, who has form, who has, quite frankly, no credibility, who is clearly a Kremlin shill. Yeah, how many Kremlin narratives did he come out with there? Let's start where he ended. 2014 was a coup. The Maidan revolution was not a coup. This is one of, I sat down with a senior Ukrainian diplomat 3 years ago, and we identified the top 5 lies that Russia tells, and one of those lies was, Maidan was a US-backed coup. It wasn't. I have spoken to literally hundreds of people from all walks of life who stood on the Maidan for over 100 days. Secondly, he started off by saying Zelensky wasn't elected. Zelensky was elected with 73% of the popular vote in a general election in 2019. I mean, that is, in a world where less than 10% of the world live under full democracy, that is a mandate that other democratic leaders could only dream of. Now, let's just tackle this issue, and we might even come back to it later. Let's tackle this issue about they should have an election. Britain, let me remind you, did not have an election between, you might correct me on if I get a year wrong, 1936 to 1945 because of the World War. Also, when you're under attack, there are certain liberties are naturally going to be suspended. And so it was in Britain between 1939 and 1945 when the country was fighting for its life. Nobody has ever said that Winston Churchill was a dictator. And the other point, of course, the other ridiculous point that he picks up on is banning churches. He has banned the Russian Orthodox Church because it is well known and recognized that it is effectively, it's a disinformation and a hybrid arm of the Kremlin's war machine.
You know, the old shill that 2014 was a CIA organized. The CIA, I've worked with them on many occasions. They couldn't organize the proverbial in a brewery, even if you'd sent all the invites out and everything else. Never mind a successful coup in a country of the size of Ukraine with everything else that's going on. So,
yeah.
You know,
well, as I said, Philip, I mean, I spent 2 years working with up to senior diplomats, meeting people down the pub, expats, Ukrainians who stood on the Maidan while people were getting battered and shot to death. And, you know, I looked into their eyes and I saw that, you know, that was one of Europe's last great revolutions, popular revolutions. There's no doubt about it. You know, you go and you live with the people and you talk to the people that were there. That's when you get the truth.
Former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram assesses the current state of conflict across the globe. No-nonsense opinion, an objective analysis of all the action from the battlefield and beyond. On the Brink with Philip Ingram.